Hey everyone, welcome back. This is the Pong clone inside Flowlab tutorial series. So in this part, we're going to start doing some of the coding for the behaviors, and we're going to start with the paddle. So you're going to click on the paddle, edit, and go to behaviors. Over here on the left-hand side, we have all of our code. We're going to go ahead and start with the triggers category, and we're going to go to always. I like to go ahead and bring my code, at least my beginning code, up here above the game. So that way when I click on the play button down here and test it out, I can still get a good view of my game. Okay, the next block that I want to do is called the numbers block, and that's here in the logic and math category. Number, and again, drag it up. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to actually have the paddle only move up and down on the y-axis, so only vertically. We're not going to move it on the x-axis. We're going to lock it there. Now, the original Pong game that Ralph Baer made, you could actually move on the x and the y-axis. So later on when this tutorial series is done, I'll show you how we can move the paddle on both the X and the Y, and you can open that up as that opens up some interesting possibilities. But for now, we're just going to move the paddles, both of them, on the Y-axis. Okay, so if you've been following the tutorial step by step, you're going to click on the number, and we're going to go ahead and give this a label. We're going to call this paddle 1. Okay, because this is player 1. And for the current value, we're going to type in the number 576. And if you're one of my students and you've been in class, that's going to sound like a really large, sort of weird, random number. So I'm going to press OK. And I'm going to click on OK down here to leave the behavior section. And I'm going to do that because I want to explain how I got to that number 576. So if you put your mouse pointer anywhere around the grid inside Flowlab, it's going to give you a set of two numbers. So I'm up here in the top left corner, and it's going to say 0/0. And this is what's called the coordinate system of Flowlab. Okay? And so the first number is the x-axis. The second number is the y-axis. So you'll see that if I go to the right, you'll see it now says 1/0. And that simply means that I am 1 square over on the x-axis and 0 squares on the y-axis. Okay? If I go downward, you'll see it says 0 on the x-axis and 1 on the y-axis. Okay? And if I keep going over here, you'll see the numbers change. And if I go somewhere here in the middle, you'll see here it is. I'm 7 over on the x-axis and 5 on the y-axis. So there's your example there. And you can get into negative numbers if you go too far over to the left, and you can get into some really big numbers over here. So it's always important to know where your objects are when you want to start to do more intermediate kinds of things. So if you look over here, when I mouse over the paddle, I get the number 18/3. So that tells me that I'm 18 grid spaces out on the x-axis, and I'm 3 or 4 or 5. This is where my paddle is located. So 18 is the important number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 18 and multiply it times 32. You have to remember that each one of these grid spaces is 32 pixels by 32 pixels, okay, for the width and the height. So when I do 18 times 32, that's 576. And I want this paddle to stay locked to this spot. So when I go back to my behaviors, that's how I got to the 576. I do not want it to move any more on the x-axis. Okay? So that'll make a little more sense as I start to put this out. All right, so I'm going to go from the always block. I'm going to go from the output to the input of the number. Okay? So there we are. Now, to actually move the mouse, I'm going to come back over here to triggers, and I'm going to go to mouse move. Then I'm going to go to the properties category, and I'm going to find the position block. And both of these are new to my students. Okay, so I'm just going to move them again out of the way so when I play test, I can see my game. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is the mouse movement. Remember, the mouse movement only has X and Y, so X is left and right, Y is up and down. So I'm going to take from the mouse move block, I'm going to take the Y output, and that's going to go up here to the Y for the position. Not the plus Y, just the Y. Okay, so make sure you don't make that mistake. Then I'm going to go from the number block output to the X. Okay, so that's going to lock the X axis to 576. Now, if I come down here in the bottom left-hand corner and press play, you'll see that if I move my mouse left and right, the paddle does not move. But if I move my mouse up and down, that I get that kind of movement right there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop that test, and that's working. You can press OK, OK, and of course you can also test playing it as well. And there we go. One thing I am noticing is that when I do this, the collision, it's not fully, you can see that it's not stopping it right there. That's ideally where I would want to stop it, but it's letting me go a little further in, and it's letting me go a little further up. So that might be something that we'll want to try to take care of at a later point. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. I will see you in the next one.